From the New York Film Festival to AFI, today we are talking 16 of the film festival movies that I've seen over the last month. We're going to rank them. Let's get into it. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. I want to talk about these movies so bad, and I will have individual reviews for probably most of these films on YouTube, the other ones on Letterboxd, of course. But today, I thought I would wrap up my thoughts, kind of wrap up the festival experience as a whole. Obviously, we've been doing it virtually. I saw a few at New York Film Festival a month or two back, Aspen Film Festival, AFI for the last 3 days, over 10 movies. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to try to keep my thoughts concise, but I want to know, which of these films have you seen down below? Which movie are you most excited for? I won't lie to you. A lot of these are going to make my top 10 at the end of the year, so it may be a bit of a rehash, but I cannot wait. This is a difficult ranking, and I need your comments down below. I won't lie to you. This may be the most one-sided tier list I've ever done. Not a lot of bad movies, so let's get right into the first film. This is Uncle Frank, starring Paul Bettany, a film that I was excited for just from the premise alone. You have Frank and his niece taking a road trip to a funeral, so it's already an emotional story, and then you add in the fact that Frank's lover joins them along the way. So, holding in secrets, new revelations, a movie that had a great opportunity to go even further than it did. I do believe there are moments missed, but I think as a whole, Uncle Frank it is a good movie, man. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and a lot of it has to do with the performance. I mean, it's one that I feel like will be forgotten about come Oscar time, but Paul Bettany is beyond incredible in this film. I have never seen a better performance from this man, and there's so much emotion there. When you get to some of these key moments towards the end, it's beautiful. So, as a whole, Uncle Frank, as soon as it comes out, I would definitely recommend this movie. Next up, we have I'm Your Woman, and I was so excited for this. I'm a huge fan of Rachel Brosnahan. That rhymed, but I was excited to see her do something outside of Mrs. Maisel in the movie space. Was this film as good as I thought it was going to be? Not necessarily. Some really good ideas, some really good moments. I have to put I'm Your Woman on the okay tier. Directed by Julia Hart, a woman and her child are on the run from the sins of her husband's past. Now, normally, you see the side of the husband, how he's running from the law, he did something wrong, maybe a couple of murders in there. But this time, we don't even get to meet the husband. We're with her the entire time. We see her side of the story, the fallout from that. And I think this film is really well paced. I think this film has some good moments in there, but it never gave Brosnahan the opportunity to shine. And I wanted to know more about her, even though we got quite a bit. I just wasn't as invested in this story as I wanted to be. Again, it's not bad. I think it's well directed. I think Brosnahan stands out. I think her character was maybe a bit flat in terms of the writing. I needed more from the script in general, and it hits these beats at the end. I'm like, you were trying to do something different, and then we hit those beats, and okay, I've seen this film before, but a good attempt. I'll say that for I'm Your Woman. Next up, The Intruder. You have our main character who encounters a traumatic experience on a trip, and then she develops a sleep disorder of sorts and suffers from very vivid nightmares. I have to put this movie on the bad tier. This is a film that I think a lot of people will like. There are Inception vibes here. It leans very heavily into sci-fi, fantastical world at times, and I think the lead performance is good. I just think the film falls flat. I think the film didn't necessarily know what it wanted to be. It's a huge mesh of genres. I lied. It's probably more of a thriller than anything, but it has all of these other vibes. It's trying to develop its characters outside of our lead, but it should have focused on our lead. I needed to know more about her. I needed to care about her. So this is probably the only one you're going to see here, just right off the bat, that I didn't like. And it's unfortunate because I think other people will like it, but The Intruder is one that, if you have the opportunity, I wouldn't recommend it. Then we have Sound of Metal. So I saw this poster and immediately thought Whiplash. I'm like, oh boy, we got another Drummer Boy movie. But really, it's all about Riz Ahmed and what happens to his hearing. He develops hearing loss and has to spend some time with the deaf community, has to readjust the way he lives his life. And that's the story here. It's not action-packed. It's not full of music. It is at the beginning somewhat, but the supporting cast combined with his performance causes this movie to be on the great tier for me. I really enjoyed this film for what it did. I enjoyed the fact that it allowed Riz Ahmed to shine through not having to do much at moments. It all comes from the emotion that is exemplified through his performance, guys. I think he's fantastic. You don't want to miss Sound of Metal. This is a must-see. I believe it's a beautiful character study. Some quiet moments, some subtle moments. Maybe the pacing suffers just a tad bit, but by the time you get to the end, I felt that emotional payoff. So Sound of Metal, great tier for me. Here we have Minari. And wow, oh wow, 1980s America, the story of a Korean family really just trying to find their place in this world. I have to put this on the awesome tier. This is what I was looking for earlier in the year. Even with the film that we'll talk about here in just a second, A24, you always expect greatness. Sometimes you don't get greatness. Sometimes you get Minari. The storytelling is beautiful here. It's so simple. You have a mother, a father, their kids, a grandmother, a friend that they meet who's, a little different, but it all comes down to trying to do what's best for your family and also dealing with the financial battle that comes with living in America in general, but especially in the 1980s for this family, their circumstances. And it's a tough battle, and we see that, and we see how difficult life gets. There's a scene in the third act that will break your heart. This movie as a whole will break your heart, and you look at the way it's filmed. I thought Lee Isaac Chung did an outstanding job with this movie. Outstanding. Love this film. Top 10 of the year for me. Minari is a must-watch, especially if you're an A24 fan. Same thing with Nomadland. I also have to put Nomadland on the awesome tier. Listen, Frances McDormand, at this point, I don't think she's a lock, but I think she is as close to a lock as you can be. Yes, for a nomination, but I'm going to go ahead and give her the win. Look, I've not seen every movie, and maybe that'll change when I see other films, but Nomadland is, again, we're talking character studies, a pure character study of this nomad who is on this journey after losing everything in the Great Recession. And again, not an action-packed movie, not a film that you're going to be on the edge of your seat the entire time. You're just kind of fascinated with the journey and the filmmaking. Chloe Zhao. I mean, you have two top-notch directors here in this awesome tier. Chloe Zhao, if she doesn't get a nomination, I am going to be shocked. This movie is beautifully filmed, the way that she handles her actors. A lot of non-actors, by the way. A lot of actual nomads that Chloe Zhao sits down and says, here's what I need you to do, here's what I need you to convey, and you believe it. And that's what a good director should do. Nomadland is an awesome film. It's a beautiful movie. Let's move on to On the Rocks, which I'm going to put on the good tier. Look, Sofia Coppola, we know what she can do as a director. Lost in Translation is a beautiful movie, and maybe my expectations were there. And that's probably on me. That's my bad. But I watched this film. Rashida Jones is great. I really think the entire cast is solid. This runs through Bill Murray. When he's on screen, he's electric. It's a father and a daughter story. It's a beautiful story trying to help her figure out, okay, is my husband doing something that maybe he shouldn't be doing? And Bill Murray's character is obviously a bit biased in terms of a certain perspective. I thought Wayans did a great job, but Murray's great. I think there's a chance at a supporting actor nomination, but because this movie didn't quite live up to my expectations in terms of pacing, in terms of the overall story, I think it may be too simplistic here, but still a good film, well filmed, well directed, nothing beyond that for me, but Murray is one to watch out for. Let's talk about Wolfwalkers. Let's go ahead and throw that on the great tier because my goodness, Wolfwalkers is a beautiful story. Wolves are seen as these demonic and evil creatures. They have to be tamed. And then you have this young hunter. She comes to Ireland with her father. And then we start to get some revelations. She meets a friend. She starts to learn some things. And she's kind of walking this tightrope. You know, you have her father and pretty much everyone else in the town on one side. Well, not everyone. A lot of them. And then you have the wolves and this beautiful, incredible story that plays out on the other side here, and she's trying to figure out, what do I do? What is right? This is a kid's movie, right? It's an animated film, but it has to be one of the most beautiful movies I've watched all year, both in terms of animation and story. Wolfwalkers is so impressive. I I was blown away. It's the best animated movie I've watched this year. Haven't seen Soul yet. This is one you have to watch out for. I believe this one is Apple Plus, so you have Wolfwalkers, On the Rocks, that is Apple. Sound of Metal and I'm Your Woman, I believe, are Amazon. The other two probably theatrical or VOD. I have to say, if you like animated films, if you like a different style of animation, but one that stands out as one of the best-looking movies I've seen all year, you have to watch Wolfwalkers. It is pretty fantastic. Next up, we have Pink Skies Ahead. Now, this is an MTV produced film, I believe, from what I saw. Starring Jessica Barden, you have Henry Winkler, who essentially plays his character from Parks and Rec, Rosa Salazar. It's all about a young woman who is struggling with anxiety after dropping out of school. Now, this is a comedy, right? This is a pure comedic film, but it's also a coming-of-age story. You think of a movie like Lady Bird. Obviously, this is somewhat of an emotional story at first, but you don't think it's going to get as deep as it does. But if anyone has ever suffered from anxiety, my wife has anxiety. She doesn't mind me saying that. And it's something that we've had to deal with before. So watching this movie and watching this girl experience this, but adding in those comedic beats, hilarious moments. There's one joke with a fork that I think is so funny. You know, I was teetering between good and great. I'm going to go ahead and throw it on the great tier just because of what this movie deals with, how it handles it in a comedic way, but also how it incorporates the emotion. That's a tough balance. I encourage you guys, when Pink Skies Ahead gets a release date, don't know when it's coming out, don't know what platform yet, this is one to be on the lookout for. Again, there are a lot of famous people in this movie, but it is really another character study. That's the ongoing theme I'm seeing within this year's awards films. Let's go ahead and throw Really Love on the good tier. Not sure about a release date for this as well. Directed by Angel Williams. It feels very much like a Barry Jenkins film, the way that it establishes this love story, builds up these two individuals. It's all about a rising black painter who tries to break into a competitive art world while balancing a whirlwind romance that he never expected. It's a very romantic, grounded, true feeling story between two people who just have, different paths, different career paths. I don't think this will work only because my life is taking me in a different direction. It's that kind of movie, but their relationship is beautiful. The acting is wonderful. It is so well made. And that's another Barry Jenkins comparison. It has this beautiful color palette that comes to life whenever we get the scenes between the two. Feels a lot like Beale Street, just not as deep, and it doesn't go as sentimental and emotional as maybe you want it to. And the story does play out in a very familiar way, but as a whole, I think it's extremely well made for the simple idea. One Night in Miami. Now, this is another one I'm kind of teetering. I'm like, okay, there's so many great moments. I don't think the story is as great as the performances. And because of that, I'm going to throw this on the good tier. Now, obviously, we're going to rank these at the end, so you'll see how high it is on the good tier. But it all comes down to the performances here. Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, and Kingsley Ben-Adir. Everyone's good. But Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X has his Oscar moment here. And I'm like, this guy needs a nomination. I think there will be some nominations. Regina King, maybe. I mean, first time behind the camera. She's outstanding. She handles these actors. And the problem for me, I don't think it's a huge issue. The story's just so simple. One Night in Miami. It's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of dialogue, and that's great. I don't think the story was maybe as impactful as I wanted it to be. I wanted a bigger and better resolve. But you look at the way the story is weaved together, the editing, the direction from Regina King, really impressive job. I think the writing in general is good. I just wanted the story to push it maybe a bit further, but I love how this movie showcases we can agree to disagree. Or sometimes we can not agree to disagree, but we're going to disagree because these individuals approach what they're fighting for in a very different way. But at the end of the day, they come together and they're all fighting the same battle. They're all going for the same goal, and that's important. That's something we really don't see in 2020. Everybody likes to yell at each other. This film does a great job at saying, you know what? We can come together, and One Night in Miami does a fantastic job at displaying that. But as a whole, I did want a bit more from the story. Next up is Shadow in the Cloud. This is all about a World War II pilot played by Chloe Grace Moretz, who is kind of stowing away on board. Something crazy happens, a bit of a sci-fi element thrown in there, and at the end of the day, this movie is okay. It's okay. I think Chloe Grace Moretz is perfect. If you're a fan of hers, you're going to watch this film. You're going to love her performance. I wanted, again, common criticism, I wanted more from the story, but I also thought it was just too much. There's sci-fi, there's fantasy, it's a war movie, it's a thriller, it's kind of a romantic film. There's this thing that is involved that kind of threw me off when it was revealed what it was. I'm like, oh, that is, how's this going to work? And then there's so many outlandish moments. It's like, you're not going to survive that. You should be dead. Why are you not dead? How are all of you still alive? It's a ridiculous movie, but it's still fun. I mean, there's some fun elements to it. It knows what it is. It embraces its tone, and Shadow in the Cloud is at least an entertaining movie, and Chloe Grace Moretz is awesome. This is There Is No Evil, 4 stories, kind of an anthology. There's an ongoing theme here of the fact that all 4 of them, or at least all 4 of these stories, have to do with one of the characters being an executioner. And this film deals with what it means to take a life, the emotional trauma and turmoil that these individuals have to go through. And, one of the stories, the guy goes home to his family, everything's normal, life is good, and then this is his career. Another story dealing with the romance, another story dealing with the fallout of that, and then an ongoing connection between the 4 of them. It's a fascinating film. I think it's overlong, but I think it's so well directed and pushing the boundaries of what makes people comfortable and uncomfortable watching, feeling the emotion. I think this is a really well-made film. It's directed by Mohamed Razulov. Not too familiar, but apparently he's a bit of a divisive filmmaker in terms of how his country has received him as a filmmaker and certain things that he's, dipped his toes in. And apparently this movie was really divisive when it was made. Again, I think it's overlong. Not all of the stories connected with me, but I'd say 2 of the 4 are outstanding. The other 2 are, at least they have good elements. So I'm going to go There Is No Evil on the good tier. Let's talk about The Father. Let's talk about how Anthony Hopkins, Kenny the Jet Smith dunk contest. It's over. Mark it down. This is over. Anthony Hopkins, here's your trophy. Here's your trophy. Look, Olivia Colman is great. The Father is about a man descending into dementia. And this is it's crazy how much this hit home with me because of what my grandmother had to go through. The fact that she had to go to a nursing home. The fact that she had the same mentality about her home. This is my home. Nobody's coming in here. When the mind starts to go, you may start to be a little bit more aggressive about things, and we see the hostility at points with Anthony Hopkins here, and it's so sad. This movie is so sad. It is not a fun watch at all. But the way this film handles memory loss. So we're seeing the film through Anthony Hopkins' perspective. We're seeing different characters. It's like, oh, who is this? But you just said one thing, now you're saying something else. We're essentially seeing what he's seeing. And the way this movie was put together, Florian Zeller's direction here, oh my goodness. I didn't expect this to be as close to a horror film as it was. It's horrifying. You're just as scared as Hopkins is. And, we get to the end of the movie where he is. It is so emotional, man. I have no words to describe The Father. This is unlike anything I've seen. And these 3 on the awesome tier here, we're going back and forth. I can't decide on which one I love more. I'm going to give you guys a ranking, but they're outstanding, and this is another character study. Wonder Darkly. These 2 characters are revisiting the memories of their past and unraveling the haunting truths in order to face their uncertain future. Diego Luna, Sienna Miller. It has Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind vibes. It really does. The way they're kind of traveling through these memories and seeing certain things play out. They don't know what they're experiencing, if what they're experiencing is the truth or not. They really don't know. It says in the summary what their future holds. And that's the truth. And Wonder Darkly is just, it's a fascinating film. Now, I don't think the construction of the movie by Florian Zeller is as good as it wanted to be. I do think at times I was just as lost as the characters, and the story gets a bit convoluted, and it plays out in a beautiful way, very emotional, but you're in it for the relationship. You're in it for this mind-bending journey through what feels like purgatory. It's pretty cool. Wonder Darkly is unlike anything you'll see this year. I promise you that. Very romantic story. And finally, Edson Oda is our director here. This is a long video. Winston Duke, Zazie Beetz, Bill Skarsgård, Benedict Wong, 9 Days. 9 days is crazy. See, normally in movies, we see people after death, before death, but this film shows us maybe what happens before life. It's all of these people fighting for an opportunity to become a human, become alive, and the way that they display this, and the fact that Winston Duke's character is seeing all of these lives play out on these screens, and they visualize these concepts that we've probably even thought about ourselves. Okay, in the afterlife, it's weird to think about, but what about the before life? In 9 days, captures this in a beautiful way. The filmmaking here is mesmerizing. Mesmerizing. One scene in particular where we get some of the best color correction I've seen all year. The cinematography is outstanding. The third act is an emotional gut punch, and this movie makes you think. It really makes you think. It comes down to the dialogue. It comes down to Winston Duke giving one of the best performances I've seen all year. And 9 days really did live up to the hype for me. Now, I may even like it more than a lot of other people, but I have to put 9 days on the awesome tier. All right, guys, I've talked enough. Let's rank these movies for right now. You may see it change by the end of the year, but obviously The Intruder is at the bottom, followed by Shadow in the Cloud. I'm Your Woman is next. Now, this is going to be a bit difficult. We're going to go with Really Love at the bottom here. I was already teetering with that being on the okay tier, followed by Wonder Darkly. There Is No Evil looks pretty good. On the Rocks, followed by Uncle Frank, and the one that was very close to being on the great tier, One Night in Miami, is next. Then we have Pink Skies ahead. I'm actually going to put Sound of Metal right above that, meaning Wolfwalkers is my favorite movie on the great tier, just by a hair. Next up on the awesome tier, in the 4th spot, right now, again, this is tough, I'm going to go Nomadland, followed by The Father. Now, the competition for me is between 9 Days and Minari. Could be recency bias. Just saw Minari, but gotta go Minari at number 1. It was just so beautiful. You may see that switch in the future, but this is such a hard list. These are some great movies. A lot of recommendations, as you can tell. I think anything on the good tier or higher, I would highly recommend. Even the 2 movies on the okay tier, I would recommend. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. This was fun. It was long. I apologize, but stay tuned because we have more awards videos to come. I promised an Oscar video that is coming, and now that I've seen some of the major Oscar players, I feel more confident making that. I'll see you guys later.